Everyone, and welcome to my channel Chess with Arsalan. In this game we are going to analyze the game between Mikhail Botvinnik and Mikhail Tal, not necessarily in that order. Mikhail Tal having white pieces and Botvinnik having black in their first World Chess Championship match in 1960. This is game number 17, and by this point Mikhail Tal was actually a point up. And by having black pieces, Mikhail Botvinnik, he's kind of waiting for his turn to have white pieces for the next game to try for the win. So e4, and Botvinnik actually immediately shows his intention. He plays c6, showing that yes, I'm a point down, but I'm not going to take it back immediately. So after d4, d5, we have Caro-Kann defense on the position, knight c3, d takes, knight takes, bishop f5, knight g3, bishop g6, and here Mikhail Tal played bishop c4, which leads to an immediate attack, but there's a variation here that should be analyzed, and it's the move f4 here in this position. It's an anti-positional move, of course, because if it weakens this diagonal, and especially when the white goes on the king side, castle's king side, this is the first point, first bad point behind it. The second is that it's blocking the bishop on c1, so two drawbacks. But what is white gaining in return is that white is having an excellent control over e5 square. For example, this knight can jump into e5 in the future, for example by playing e6, h4, h6, knight f3, knight d7, and knight e4, knight e5. And if black ever exchanges on e5 with the knight, then f takes e5 gives white an excellent play, because this diagonal will be open, so the first drawback is gone. This file would be open, so if black ever goes on the king side, then there will be a huge attack on this file. So there are pros and cons for this move, but f4 is probably not a very good move. So after bishop g6, bishop c4 was played, and after e6 we have knight 1 e2. The aim is quite obvious, knight f4. So after knight f6, knight f4 was played, and here instead of knight f4, actually there's a variation that is quite interesting. It can be very educational actually. Here there's a game that Paul Kers played, and it's to castle kingside at this moment. So after bishop d6, covering the f4 square, now f4 itself can be played at this moment, and after queen to c7 or queen to c7, we have an interesting situation. Now here is the point. When white is playing f4, he's intending to play f5. So you either block it mechanically with bishop f5, or you allow it with queen c7. So after f5, e takes f5, knight takes f5, and this is a very double-edged position, because after bishop takes h2 check, king h1, now the king is still in the center, this knight is attacking g7, this bishop is in an excellent diagonal, this file is open, this bishop is free to move, but on the other hand the pawn structure around the king has been severely jeopardized, and this is a very double-edged position. Eventually black may have to exchange on f5, which potentially gives white two bishop advantage. So castle kingside with the idea of f4 is actually quite nice, and you can try it. But knight f6 was played by Mikhail Botvinnik, and here Mikhail Tal played knight f4, and after bishop d6, he didn't bother with h4, because after queen to c7, then h5, white is hoping that after queen to c7, after h4, excuse me, black is gonna have to play h6, which knight takes g6, f takes g6, and bishop takes. This is the hope, but there's a tactical problem with this move, because queen to c7 can be played, increasing the pressure on the f4, and after h5, now black does not have to play h6 because of this tactical shot bishop takes c2. So h4 is not practical at this moment. So bishop d6 was played. After bishop d6, we have knight takes g6, and after h takes, we have new circumstances in the position. The h file is now open, and if white ever goes to the king side by playing castle king side, this line will be a source of attack to the white's king. But immediate castle is not dangerous, because after knight e4, this is played because black wants to bring the queen on the h4. Then white can play rook to e1, forcing the knight to do something. If white exchanges, then h takes and h4 is covered. If the knight goes back, the story is sealed, and options are not in black's favor. For example, f5 is very weak because it's giving away this e6 square. So castle kingside immediately is not very dangerous for white. But white here, Mikhail Tal, after h takes g6, Mikhail Tal played bishop g5. And after knight with d7, here Mikhail Tal played castle. But a better continuation was to play queen e2 with the idea of castle queenside. And black is slightly better in this position, but white has an active play. But after knight with d7, Mikhail Tal played castle kingside. And after queen to a5, attacking bishop on g5, now we have a unique position. It's unique not because of the position, it's unique because of the decision that Mikhail Tal made here. Here in this position, Mikhail Tal played f4. And what's the idea behind f4? This is a very ugly move. Visibly, it's very ugly move, but there are some points behind it. First of all, let's see the drawbacks. The drawbacks are mentioned earlier. It opens this diagonal, and especially the fact that the king is in the king side. It is locking this bishop on g5, but this bishop cannot be attacked by a pawn because there is no pawn on h6, so h7, h6 is not possible at this moment. But there are some buts here. If black wants to exploit the weakness of this bishop, he has to open up the position, and opening up the position is via the means of e5 or c5. And in both ways, opening up the position means that the person who has two bishop advantage, aka white in this position, will have a free hand. Will have a very good space for the bishops. This is number one. Number two, if you want to refute the f4, the move f4 that was played, then you have to use some tactical means, and giving Tal tactical possibilities and complicate positions means extra chances for Mikhail Tal. And since Tal is having white pieces, he is actually going to try to win the game, and giving him possibilities and giving him tactical means, it means that you are increasing the Tal's chance. And point number three, which is actually the most important one, is that at the moment the only source of counter attack for black is this open file open h file. So if black wants to use it, he has to go castle queenside. When you go castle queenside, then you will see that white has pawn majority on the queen side, and eventually he will push it forward and cause problem for the black's king on the queen side. So this is the third problem. So f4, and here Botvinnik took the challenge. He castled queenside, and after a3, here Botvinnik played queen to c7. First of all, you cannot exploit f4 immediately by playing c5, because here white can play b4, sacrificing a pawn, and after queen takes b4, bishop e2. Now the b file is open, a file is open as well, this file is open. Bishop f3 is coming with a huge attack on the queen side where black king is. So c5 is not practical at this moment, so queen c7 was played, but b4 came anyway because white is trying to push his pawns on the queen side. So knight b6, knight e2, and here bishop came back to e1, increasing the pressure on the d4. But here Botvinnik actually, instead of b4, he could have played e5, and he actually lost an immediate win, because after f takes e5, bishop takes e5, exploiting this pin. Bishop g4 can be played, and after queen b8, c3, because this pawn needed some sort of support. Then rook takes h2, king takes h2, bishop takes g3, king g1, and knight b d5. This pawn is weak, the king is weak, this bishop, this queen, and this knight are well lined up toward white's king. This rook can come into action to h file, so it would be an immediate win for black, but Botvinnik didn't take the risk and did not play e5. Instead he played bishop e7, and after queen to d3 he played knight f d5. Again again here c5 was possible. It would have give black some chances, but Botvinnik decided to play calmly, and he played knight takes f5, knight f d5, excuse me. So bishops are exchanged, and here here Botvinnik played queen to e7. His aim is that he's transferring the queen to the h4, where he can attack down the h file. But if Botvinnik plays knight takes e7 instead of queen takes e7, he plays knight takes e7, then it will give white an extra possibility because of knight e4, because now white is not losing a tempo after queen h4. So this was a very smart move. But anyway, queen takes e7 was played. This was the smart move, and here white played an automatic move c4. And if you look at the position, you see that most of the white's moves are actually quite automatic, and white does not have to spend too much time on them, despite black's move, especially from now on, because black has to rule in and rule out so many variations, because there are many plans in the position, and that's one of the problems with Botvinnik's position at this moment. What are the plans? First of all, the attack down the h file. This is one of the plans. Black also can play against the d4 pawn because it's weak, and every move there is a dilemma between playing on the h file and playing against the d4 pawn. So this is one of the problems that Botvinnik is facing. At this moment Botvinnik played knight f6, but there was a chance to play knight takes c4, and after queen takes c4, queen to h4. This did not happen, by the way, but rook f3, knight takes f4, h3, rook takes d4, for example, and after queen c5, now black has an attack. Black is not winning. This position is not winning for black, but it's a long way. It's a long way for white to prove that this position is not winning for black. White has to be very careful in this position, because there is 1, 2, 3, and 4 pieces attacking on the king. So it's sort of complicated. But instead, after c4, Botvinnik played knight f6 and rook a to b1. And here Mikhail Tal missed a chance. Here Mikhail Tal had a chance to enter to a very complicated endgame, which could have given him some winning chances, and it was to play a4 at this moment, sacrificing pawn. So queen takes b4, a5, knight takes c4, so this is pawn number 2. Rook f to b1, attacking the queen. Queen to d2, queen to c4, queen takes d4 check. Now white has to exchange, and at this moment white is having a bishop for 3 pieces, and he can try to play a6 and then bishop f3, undermining the pawn structure on the queen side and weaken them and eventually taking them. So this was one of the ideas that white could have employed, but it's very complicated in the especially that it's an end game. It would be very complicated, but there was a chance there. So a4 was not played. Instead, Mikhail played rook a to b1, queen to d7, increasing the pressure on the d4 pawn, rook b to d1, king to b8, queen to b3, queen to c7, and now this queen c7 is actually a great move, because this queen c7 serves 2 purposes. It's first of all, it's a defensive piece on the queen side, but it also increases the pressure on the f4 pawn, especially the fact that black is about to play rook h4, so the pressure on the f4 is going to be increased. a4 is played by white with the aim of a5, of course, rook h4, and now a5 was played anyway. Knight to c8, queen to e3, defending the f4 pawn, and here Botvinnik played knight e7. Very interesting move, because it has a very specific idea in mind. The idea is that after knight f5, if white plays knight takes f5, then in that case black will play e takes f5, then transferring one of the rooks to the e file, and then install the knight on e4, which can never be driven away because there is no pawn to push it away. So this was the idea, and it's actually a beautiful idea. So queen e5 was played, and rook h8, b5 was played. Again, this idea of knight f5 is still there, and c takes b5 by black. And here Mikhail Tal here played queen takes b5, and the idea of queen b5 is that white is maintaining the b file open for the attack. There was another possibility here, and it was to play c takes b5, but it's not gonna go anywhere, because, for example, after knight ed5, rook to c1 attacking the queen, queen to d6, and white does not have enough resources to increase the pressure on the queen side, and basically the attack is going nowhere. So this was not c takes b5 was not a very good move, and Tal decided to play queen takes b5. So a6, the advance of the a pawn should have been stopped, and it was. Queen to b2, rook to d7. This rook is defending the b7 pawn, and after c5, white is introducing the new threat. So what is the threat? Threat is to transfer the bishop to the long diagonal, and after that he is trying to play c6, jeopardizing the pawn structure around the king. So after king h8, because this king had to get out of the line of the queen, so bishop f3 was played. Now the threat of c6 is real. That's why black played knight c6, and it's a double purpose move. It is attacking d4, and it's also preventing it's actually is preventing c6. So, and here is where we have a a unique situation. Unique. Why it is unique? Because now Mikhail Tal made a nice decision. He decided to exchange the bishop for knight, and the reason that he did that it's because he doesn't want black to have extra power against the d4 pawn. That's why he exchanged it. He eliminated one of the attackers of the d4 pawn. This is the basic idea behind it. So queen takes c6, rook f3. This rook is going to go to the b6, queen a5, queen a4, and rook f to d3. The obvious move, rook to b3, would have been met by rook h d8, and the rook on d1 has to keep protection of the d4 pawn. It's not advantageous for white. So Tal made a trick. He first played rook f to d3, and after rook to c8, now he played rook to b1, increasing the pressure on the b7. And here Botvinnik got greedy. He played queen takes a5. And by this move, he's actually taking a great risk. Why? Because he's opening a file toward his king, which gives white additional resources for the attack. And here was an excellent move by Mikhail Tal. He played rook to b3. Rook a3 was possible, but after queen d8, black has time to complete defensive setup with rook c6, which defends the a6, and white is not gonna go anywhere from this moment on. But first he played rook to b3, increasing the pressure on b7. So queen to c7 has to be played. Now white played queen a3, king to a7 was played, and now rook to b6 was played. Now the attacking setup is completed, but here this position is not winning for white. Still, it's better for black. But here, because of time trouble that both players had, there's a couple of let's say unwise decisions were made, especially by Mikhail Botvinnik. Here he got even more greedy and took on the f4, and his plan was to actually capture the d4 pawn. It's not a bad move, but I think he should have stopped or prepared it more. For example, with something like knight f to d5 and then taking on f4. This would have been much more stable, but he did it immediately. And here Mikhail Tal played knight to e2, defending d4, and after queen e4, attacking the knight, queen to b3 was played. And now the threat against b7 is increased, and if black plays queen to e2, then white actually can play rook to b7 check, and he will be winning in that case. And here in the time trouble on the move 39, Mikhail Botvinnik made the last mistake. He missed this threat of rook takes h6 and played queen to d5 in this position. He should have played king to h8. King to h8 was the only move in the position, but he played queen to d5, the last mistake, and Tal seized the moment. He played rook takes a6 check. If he takes here, then queen b6 is checkmate, so he has to play king to b8, and after queen a4 he resigned. Mikhail Botvinnik resigned at this moment because for example, if he plays rook takes c5, for example, giving his king some sort of escape, then d takes c5 can be played. Another one, b6, giving some space to the king, then rook takes can be played, and this position is winning for white. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and see you in the next video. Goodbye.